one book which I didn't discover until much later on in life is one which concerns human relationships to the state. And the question which it seeks to answer is how much power and how much restriction does a state legitimately place on the actions of any individual member of that state? What is the relationship between the two? How much freedom do you have to do the things that you want? And where does that freedom hit a barrier? Where is it that you can do everything you want to do up to a certain point and then you can't go beyond that? And what defines that connection? Well, the person who studied that and produced the probably the best account of it was a guy called John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill lived in the last century, but one, in fact, now that we're in the 21st century. And he wrote a book which has become a classic. It's a classic book on liberty. That's the title of the book, On Liberty. And he wrote this book in order to try to discuss where it is that we can set a boundary so that we allow the maximum amount of freedom to every individual in a country, and where should that be drawn, and on what principle should it be drawn. Mill, there's the book, by the way, John Stuart Mill. That's a picture of him. You can see he looks like an old Victorian guy anyway, and he was able to set out what he called a single principle, a very fundamental principle on what it was which enabled you to draw the line, the careful line between maximum freedom for the individual and the control of a government or a state on someone. And he produced the principle called the harm principle. And the harm principle was elucidated in such a way that, well, let me allow John Stuart Mill to recite the harm principle for you, because it's within this book and it's well worth looking at. Let me see if I can find it. Mill says that the only purpose for which power can rightfully be exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. In other words, you can do whatever you like. You have complete freedom to do anything you want to do, provided that you do not harm other people. Now, it seems a very simple and basic rule, but it carries you into a direction which you may find opens up a vast avenue of freedom, and he discusses that. For example, he says that you can't, therefore, legislate in order to protect people from themselves, or to do good for them, or to, if you think you know what's best for them, to legislate in that respect. So he goes on to say that, a person's own good, whether that's his physical good or his moral good, is not a sufficient warrant. In other words, you can't produce a law just to say it'll do people good. That's not a basis for law. It's only a basis for law if it will prevent harm to others. A person cannot rightfully be compelled to do or to forbear because it will be better for him to do so, because it will make him happier. You don't just legislate or produce laws to make people happy. That's not the purpose of the law. That would be producing what I suppose John Stuart Mill might call, but didn't call, the nanny state, where you're looking after people. That's not the purpose of the law, he says. There are good reasons for, these are good reasons for remonstrating with people, for educating them, for reasoning with them, persuading them, entreating them, but it's not a good reason to compel them to do things by the law, or to bring any penalty of the law or any evil upon them. So this is, it sets out then a very clear and a very precise way of determining that. It's a book well worth studying and reading, and I would strongly recommend to you that you have a look at John Stuart Mill's book on liberty. Find it again also in Penguin Classics.